The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
Very well, thank you. And Joanne Mercier. Hello, Joanne.
Hello, hello.
Before we get started, I have a little anecdote. I usually go for a daily walk in my neighborhood each morning, and that I can. And I've noticed a couple things recently. One, there's not really technology, but a lot of my neighbors are doing spring cleaning or something because there are a lot of dumpsters and driveways. But two, I think I know what technology a lot of my neighbors are buying with their stimulus checks, because there are a lot of TV boxes out on the curb.
There you go.
Oh, yes.
It's just kind of fascinating. Like, what is it that people turn? What big tech purchase do people turn to when they get extra cash in their pocket? I suppose I would have guessed TV. I mean,
yeah, I would say most people, assuming they're not buying an appliance of some sort,
right?
Like a dishwasher, fridge, or something like that. A TV, computer. I think those are probably the two big ones that people, they're going to upgrade their computer or upgrade their TV.
Yeah.
Or any other appliance now, because you're home more. You start to notice things are not as they should be. So some of those TVs, well, maybe they still work well, want a little upgrade because you're watching them a little bit more.
That's true.
I know we're replacing a microwave that's starting to, go south because we're home so much. So.
Yep. That's true. Actually, I have a repairman coming in for my dishwasher soon, because a brand new dishwasher, by the way, which it's only it just predates we bought it with our tax refund, and we have 7 people here all day, every day, so there's lots of dishes. But it's already, like, the buttons are already on the control panel are already breaking. That's a whole nother thing. It's covered by the warranty, but I'm annoyed by it. But yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. Yes. So let's talk about this one, Father Corey. I have to say, the last time we were together, you talked about you building your Hackintosh. That got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people were interested in this topic. Very surprising. We should do this more often.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. Yeah. And by the way, it's still running beautifully. I'm sitting here looking at it, and it's doing its job quite beautifully.
That's awesome. I'll be curious when you start putting the big updates on it, how that goes through. We'll come back to that when you do. But we did get a couple specific feedback from listeners that I thought might be interesting to discuss. They have some questions to follow up. So the first one comes from listener Richard, who sent an email, who said he's built many Hackintosh machines, and says, I'm glad you mentioned that you have to be ready to be your own tech support. You also mentioned you have to have access to a real Mac in order to get the OS and other setup files. Father mentioned upgrades, which leads me to another discovery I made over the years. Yes, you can run Mac OS on AMD processors, and more importantly for gamers, NVIDIA graphics cards. You just have to get extremely geeky. You want to respond to that bit?
Yeah, I agree with that. I realized that after I focused on Intel, that I found out that you can get it on AMD, because for a long time you couldn't at all. It just would not work on AMD processors whatsoever. Just don't even bother trying. It won't boot. But they've since fixed that. NVIDIA was used by Apple for quite a while, actually. If I'm not mistaken, my old iMac, which is a 2009 iMac, used an NVIDIA chip, if I remember, which, frankly, I've used NVIDIA for years. I love NVIDIA. NVIDIA was the first to really support Linux well, so I've got kind of a fondness for NVIDIA. So I think depending on it, I might use an NVIDIA chip when I upgrade my video card.
You know when that changed, when Apple switched from NVIDIA to ATI, and now they do Intel internal, integrated graphics. It changed when NVIDIA inadvertently leaked a new Mac before the announcement, and Steve Jobs was so mad that he said, "No more NVIDIA graphics."
And Apple has a long memory. We've talked about this before, I think, where tech agencies like Twit Network does not get invited to Apple events because they criticized Apple after an event
Right.
And I think it was Steve Jobs said, nope.
Yep, that guy's blacklist. And Steve Jobs is long gone, but his blacklist lives on.
And being added to. So I can understand that. But so yeah, it is good to hear that. I forgot about NVIDIA actually being supported. Still, you do have to work with it, though. Like he points out, though, Apple does kind of play cat and mouse with the Hackintosh community with stuff like this, but it is possible. It is very possible.
Now, he did bring up another point, which is worth talking about. He says, I'm surprised you didn't mention, or did I miss it, that running macOS on your own hardware is a copyright violation. Nobody's going to kick down your door, but I wonder how Father reasons that. He's using a lot of people's work, their jobs, and not paying for it by buying the hardware. I'm not accusing. I honestly like to know, since it's bothered me when building one. What do you think? How do you address that, Father?
Well, I think I didn't say copyright, because I don't know if you could technically call it a copyright violation. You can call it a term of service violation. I think I did specifically say that. I tried to listen to the episode, and I couldn't remember for sure if I had said that specifically. It is a term of service violation from Apple. Is Apple going to sue over it? Again, most likely not. It's such a small community. It's such a small group. Is it stealing? And this is the perpetual argument of software since the first, floppy disk was invented. Is this stealing people's work? Now, some of macOS is open source. The kernel is still open source. Other parts aren't, the GUI and so on. So this is kind of the perpetual argument. Admittedly, I justify it for myself because I have 2 Apple computers sitting here, one of which still is up to date. So, this is like the thing of, if you buy a copy of Microsoft Office, can you put it on 2 computers instead of just one if it's only licensed for one? Is how I look at it, again, for mine, because I have a license for 1 copy of Catalina. Using a second copy, am I still doing it? I don't know. Right.
Does Apple specifically license the operating system to whatever hardware that you've purchased? It's a trick. I don't think it's a cut and dried either legal question or moral question like you. I don't think it's cut and dried. I think if you have an Apple machine sitting there that you can install the software on, I think that's morally, I think you're okay. I'm not going to definitively say one way or the other, but I don't know that it would drive me to confession. That would feel like a little bit scrupulous to worry too much
obviously,
about it.
but the fact that I did it and I'm talking about it, I don't see myself being on completely immoral grounds. It's a discussion I think is going to go on until the parousia, basically until Jesus returns.
Right.
We're going to be, I can guarantee you, on the Enterprise D, they're arguing about whether or not it's, they can make a copy of the system files for the computer.
Maybe this is why, whenever they download data, it means that it doesn't mean they're making a copy. They're actually downloading it.
That's the solution to it. It's like, you can't have a copy. It's against the terms of service to have a copy of the Dr. hologram. So we have to just move the copy from one system to the other.
I find it extremely amusing because you're dealing with an issue that musicians have been dealing with for years, where we make copies to do page turns. And a lot of people have said, well, you should buy a second copy. Well, church musicians don't get paid a lot to begin with. So, making a copy to make a page turn or to blow it up when your eyes go bad, you're still using that copy. You're still using the copy you paid for. Now, if you have a Mac at home already, a real one, then I'm with you. It's an age-old problem. You only get blood from a stone so many times.
Well, it's funny you mentioned music because Oregon Catholic Press, OCP, for those who don't know, is one of the big church publishers. One of the big Catholic church publishers, probably the biggest. They actually said all our music is free to use for live stream for a year all this COVID stuff going on. So they gave permission for a year, which means if you do it after this point, you have to pay them licensing fees to do a live stream mass
with their music. Yeah.
And again, this is where we get into that debate is, I would personally say, no, I pay for your missalettes. I pay a lot of money every year for your missalettes. You've gotten your money. I'm not paying more money to put it on a live stream. And if you don't like that, guess what? We've got 2,000 years of chant I'll go to instead. Sorry.
And those folks are dead.
anyways, that's a whole long discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I'll use the Protestant hymnal.
That'll allow you to do it. So anyways, so that's kind of my answer is it really is. It's one of these things that people have argued about for a very long time and will continue to argue about. And, if Apple called me tomorrow, if Apple Legal called me tomorrow or sent me a letter tomorrow saying cease or desist, then I probably would remove it.
Right.
Do I see that happening?
No.
It's Apple's not worried about me.
Yeah.
Apple's not worried about me.
No, they are not. If you were turning out 1,000 copies of that Hackintosh and selling them online, that might be. Yeah. I mean, if you were selling even onesie-twosies online, they might come after you. But you're not. You're building it for your own purposes. Yeah.
And there are people who build systems that are Hackintosh capable.
Yeah.
But the buyer still has to go through the steps of downloading and installing.
Exactly.
So.
I liken it to when I was ripping my CDs, not DVDs, so my CDs years ago, before Apple Music and all that stuff. I owned the disc, and I ripped it to my computer and put it in a bucket in my shed. And I own the disc, it's my thing. And if someone cared, I could show them the disc. It's no different than making a mixtape. So, I think we're on good ground there. So, Richard, thank you, Richard, for that email, and thank you. He mentions that he's a Patreon supporter, and thank you very much for being a Patreon supporter. We couldn't do this without you. Our next comment comes from Facebook, where listener John writes, regarding Hackintosh for audio and video editing, if you want to tinker, build an AMD-based machine with an NVIDIA graphics card. Even building with 2-year-old technology, you'll get more bang for your buck. And I think he means an AMD with NVIDIA processor on Windows. I think he's hinting at Windows, because he says if you're a super creative type, completely committed to the Mac ecosystem, that won't work for you. But if you're a nuts and bolts person trying to get everyday audio and video work done, I believe it's a much more practical path to take that comes with lots more options in the future.
And I've built AMD systems in the past. My actually, one of the things as I'm packing to move to a new assignment is getting rid of things. And one of the things I'm going to get rid of is my old seminary computer I built when I was at seminary, and it was the AMD Athlon 64.
Oh, wow.
So I've had AMDs, and that was back when the AMD Athlon 64 was the chip. That was back when AMD just beat Intel badly in the 64 chip market, which is why it's still considered the AMD 64 platform, x86 AMD 64 platform. But so I'm very familiar with AMD. I kind of wanted Intel because AMD's slipped. They're not as good as they used to be. They had their time, and they're kind of running second fiddle again. So that's my opinion.
And as far as I think the question, I interpret it as a question saying, why build a Hackintosh when you can build an inexpensive Windows box that can do the same thing? But there's something about Windows has come a long way. As a dyed-in-the-wool Apple guy who still bleeds rainbow-colored apples, I will acknowledge that Windows machines are much better than they used to be. But I think I don't think it's just Mac prejudice to say that the Mac is still superior for a lot. I think I just feel like if I'm going to put this machine, if I'm going to put this machine in front of someone who is not a Mac, a computer nerd, I want something that's easy to use and that I can work with remotely, especially to fix. When my wife and I got married, she had a Dell laptop, and that thing, I hated that thing. And the first chance I got, I converted her to Mac, because I said, if this marriage is going to work, you need to be on the same platform I am. And she's like, I don't care. Just give me just I just need a computer.
Just so I can do what I need to do. Yeah.
But so I don't know. I mean, Windows is better, but I still don't think it's there for.
It's still clunky. There's still issues. Mm-hmm. It still doesn't look as good. The font choices that Microsoft continues to make in Windows is not as polished. Their font system, I don't think, is as polished.
Yeah.
Mac does a lot more of the anti-aliasing and things like that than Windows does. And as I said, I'm committed to the Mac platform. As we're sitting here recording this, I'm using audio hijack to record my audio.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've been doing that for a while. Dom got me on it. And you can't get that for Windows. It's only a Mac system. I would have to come up with a new recording system for Windows to do the podcasts.
Right.
And I like Mac. That's why I built a Hackintosh. I like Macs. I just don't want to pay the Apple tax if I can help it.
Is it because Windows is still, after all this time, just considered a business, platform, and so business people really don't care about creative things like Mac users do?
I think it's considered a general platform.
Yeah, it's a general. I don't think you can say that business people don't care about the graphical interface, because lots of businesses do audio, video, and graphic design and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
But I think the more accurate way to put it is the vast majority of Windows machines are sold as boxes for businesses. And so the operating system and the hardware is aimed at that vast audience, at a vast general audience, whereas Apple aims at a narrower audience. And while I would dare say the Mac could do almost any business function that you can imagine, the philosophy behind how they approach solving this particular problem, the technology problem, it just comes from two different directions. I think that's the big thing. If you like the Microsoft philosophy and the way they see the world in terms of computing, then the Windows machine is for you. But if you see the world more like Apple does, then that's the computer for you. I think that's really how it boils down.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. And it is a difficult thing because, of course, Windows, because it is so much more widely supported, it's so much easier to, for people, it's more easier for someone who grew up with Windows to sit down on a Windows system. So that's where you find, the games. That's where you find a lot of the apps. It's funny where on the phone side, iOS has so many more iOS only apps than Android does.
Yeah, it's the reverse.
It's opposite.
Yeah,
it's it's the reverse, that Windows has so many more Windows only programs.
Yeah.
Than
but
Mac does.
The Mac only programs, like you said, Audio Hijack. I mean, there is so many creative. Really, it's almost the ecosystem. There's so many creative programmers on the Mac side that are providing that advantage. Even though there's arguably fewer of them. All right, so I think that I think we should wrap up our discussion there. If anyone else has other questions or any other comments regarding Hackintosh, this topic, Windows Mac argumentation, we'd love to hear from you, Windows folks. You can argue the other side. I'm fine with that. We'd love to hear from you. And if you could send email to technology@sqpn.com, we'll have all the rest of our contact info at the end of the podcast as well. All right. So let's move on to our second segment, where we're going to talk about this recent technology hullabaloo in the news regarding social media and politicians. And I just want to preface it, we're going to try to stay away from specific partisan political debate and talk about politicians. We want to approach this from a more general viewpoint of what is the role of social media in our society. What can we expect from them? Are they a publisher like a newspaper? Are they a more neutral platform like a bulletin board on a wall? And should politicians be treated differently than the rest of us with regards to their public pronouncements on these platforms? So the president had a to-do with Twitter over them labeling one of his posts with a glorifies violence tag. He issued an executive order which basically threatens social media platforms with being labeled as publishers under the Communications Decency Act, which would mean that the SEC can regulate them regarding these things with regards to fairness to people's speech, just like newspapers or not newspapers, but public broadcasters like TV stations and those guys who use the airwaves have to, because those are licensed from the federal government, they have to have a viewpoint neutral, or at least they have to provide both viewpoints on political issues.
In theory. In
theory, yes. So we don't have to talk about the specifics of the president's executive order because a lot of people are debating whether it's even illegal or not. But we could bring that. We could get into that if you want. But what do you think about this question of is Twitter, Facebook, and any other social media platform, should we consider these to be a publisher, or because they are moderating, they are labeling things, they are removing certain content, which seems that they're not. If they're moderating, are they just a neutral platform? What do you guys think of this question?
I look at these more as platforms than publishers, because I guess maybe it's because I'm older and I think that something that's published is being done from a specific point of view. Like a book or a newspaper or a magazine. They have a target audience, and this is they're giving you content that goes with this audience. The social media seems to be a place where people can gather and publish their own.
Right.
But somebody is there as the quote unquote league of decency to make sure that things don't either get out of hand or get too wild for general consumption. So I really look at them more as a platform rather than a publisher.
That's kind of been the debate for quite a while now, even before our current president, is, issues of should Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube, should they be able to say, we're going to allow this on their platform, we're not going to allow that. And there's one article you pointed to about, that there really isn't a distinction between publisher and platform. It's
right.
kind of, it's one of those hard things, because these companies obviously want to protect themselves. They want to protect themselves from people posting things that are illegal, immoral, puts the company
violence.
in, things that could hurt others, and things that could, so they want to protect themselves, but at the same time, they have to walk a very fine line to say, we are going to allow this even though other people might find it offensive, or vice versa. We are not going to allow this because people find it offensive. And that's really, I think, the bigger issue. Now, whether or not they should be saying this political person, whether this side of the argument or that side of the argument, said something that is fake news, quote unquote, or said something that is, could lead someone to be a call to arms, whether or not they should be doing that. That's the difficult point there, because, and if a politician did post something that was blatantly illegal, where it's clearly he's crossed this line into illegality, should that politician be then prosecuted for it? But then what is the responsibility of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., of policing that? Because if you and I did it, YouTube would yank it down in a second.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook would yank it down in a second, and they have no remorse to doing it, and rightfully so. Perhaps not. I don't know, but
right. So there's a question: do politicians, do elected officials get treated differently than the rest of us? That's one question. I think, Joanne, to your point about the difference between a platform and a publisher, I think there's a point. You make a good point that a publisher curates its content, even if it's taking user content. They're making a decision on which ones to publish. Mm-hmm. Whereas social media is about just people publishing what they want. Now, if they start curating, like all public, all things of a certain viewpoint get, filtered out or not allowed, that might turn them into a publisher. It's one of these things where, when you start making distinctions, it becomes very difficult sometimes when something's very generic to start making such tight distinctions. As an example, I had a conversation with my son, my 9-year-old son, at lunch today, and he asked me, what's a sandwich? Like, how do you define a sandwich? Well, is a hot dog a sandwich? Well, okay, so it's like something in between pizza bread. Okay, is a burrito a sandwich? Well, yes, no, maybe. If it's about stuff in between bread, is like a samosa a sandwich or a dumpling? Well, no, that's because it's cooked together. Okay, what about like a jelly donut? Like you start making these, like the jelly is put in after it's cooked. Like these are it would be the best sandwich for lunch ever. But these once you start making these distinctions, and I use that example advisedly because there was a famous case in Colorado, I think, where the court had to decide the legal definition of a sandwich because I think I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was, but I think it was bars could serve certain kinds of food limited to sandwiches and that sort of thing. And this bar wanted to sell burritos, and the local government said, no, that's not a sandwich. And thus began this legal case. But once you start taking something like everyone knows what a sandwich is, and then you start trying to make distinctions, then you end up like asking questions like, is a jelly donut a sandwich? Which everyone, obviously our preferences aside, is obviously not a sandwich. But yet, if you start making these distinctions, and I think it's a similar thing with these social media platforms, are they a publisher? No, not really. We know they're not really publishers, but do they sometimes act like publishers? Sometimes. Yeah. I experienced the same thing last summer. If you remember, I posted something on Facebook and had it taken down because it violated community standards. And it was a quote from St. Thomas Augustine about how men can sometimes not be their best. I forget exactly what the quote was.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
And it was something, and I never got an explanation for why it was, in what way it violated community standards. The guess was, it seemed like it was anti-man, which, if anybody knows me, is ridiculous.
It was something like man at his worst or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, man at his worst.
Hullabaloo. That was.
Yeah, and it's like, and I get what the president is saying is if Twitter is going to editorialize and fact check his tweets with disclaimers, that seems to be like their, sometimes these fact checks, as we've seen in a lot of media, are more opinions. It's your opinion that this isn't aligned with facts. You see it all the time. I don't know. It's tricky, and I don't think we could hash out here in a podcast. But what do you think?
No, but isn't that like part of their terms of service, where things will be checked, and if they're not factual, then they have the right to, tell you to take it down, or it's like YouTube. YouTube sort of curates by they were saying through this COVID-19 crisis that they're going to be doing more automated. Curation rather than human beings. So that created problems because the computer is told to look for certain things, and if you see it, pull it down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, but it's part of their terms of service. So at least they said, this is going to happen, let us know. It's the same thing. If the terms of service says, if you are not factual and you're spreading bold-faced lies that can hurt people, well, we're going to want to either tell you to take it down, or we're going to put a disclaimer saying, you really need to, take this as it looks. I think they have a right to do that if it's already in their terms of service. If it isn't there and they didn't cover their butts for it, then they really don't have a leg to stand on.
I think one of the arguments is like that is, if you don't like the way that Twitter is doing business, don't use Twitter. I think people are saying, go somewhere else. Others are arguing that Twitter has reached the point of, just like utilities, where it has a virtual, almost it's not a monopoly, but it has enough of a hold. It's become so important to the public discourse that it has to be treated differently.
Well, it's become the. I've heard the argument that it's become like the public square.
Right.
We think, you think the Greek arguments in philosophy all happen in the public square, and people are making the argument that today we don't go to the public square and have debates. We don't go to theaters and have debates. We do them online.
Right.
And we have these discussions of political and sociological and all these other issues that affect our country, our culture, our world, are done online and are done through Twitter and Facebook and all these other social media apps. And that's where the concern comes in of, does Facebook have the right to play fact police?
Right.
Does Twitter have the right to play fact police?
The analogy would be as if a private company came to your town and set up a public square. Like, well, this is our property, but we're inviting people to come in and talk and have debates and talk about the important things to our town. And then people start doing that. And then after a while, they say, you know what? we don't want you all to say certain things, so some of you can't talk. Or you're allowed to come here, but there's certain things you're not allowed to say. And this public square, has become, important. It's become the way that the town communicates. Say, well, that could be of concern to the local officials, and people could say, well, you've made this place something necessary for us as a community. So we're going to tell you that we're going to regulate you, even though this is your property. I mean, it's a bit of a strained analogy, I know, but there is somewhat precedent to this in other areas where a private property became so important to the public good that it was regulated to allow it to remain good for the most people. So,
and people bring up the analogy of utilities, but with good reason. A lot of our utilities started out as private corporations putting up the electric grids, putting in the natural gas lines, et cetera, and it got to the point where government had to step in and say, okay, you are now a public good. Yes, you are still a private company. Our electric company here is still a privately owned.
Right.
It used to be actually a publicly owned company, and then they deregulated it and sold it off. And now it's a private corporation that owns our electric grid. But they are heavily regulated. They can't just raise rates just because they feel like it. They got to go through the Public Utilities Commission and all that kind of stuff to raise rates. And I think that's the argument people are making, that these social media have set themselves up as conversation utilities, if you will, public conversation utilities.
Interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting way of thinking about it. Joanne, do you have anything more to say on that anymore?
No, I'll leave it there.
Okay. All right. We're not going to solve it in one segment, and I'm sure this is not a question that's going to go away. We'll be revisiting this, but again, love to hear from the listener. What do you think about this, and what's your viewpoint on this? And do you sometimes feel like your viewpoint is not welcome by the publisher or by the operator of a social media platform? And if you have any experiences along those lines. All right, so I want to move on to some headlines that we've got from to talk about. The first one is that Hulu and Plex are both rolling out features for watch parties. This has become a big deal lately with all the lockdown. We can't go to the movies with our friends. We can't get together at people's houses to watch a movie. And I think Facebook started this thing where you could have a watch party with a Facebook video, and you could have people watch it together. But it essentially what it does, and there was third-party apps, I think, that were doing this for Netflix. So it's essentially, the idea is you and your friends and in your respective homes decide to watch something together, a movie or a TV show, and so it starts at the same time. So you're watching it together and presumably texting each other during the show or what have you about what's going on. Now Hulu looks like you can only do this with their $12 a month no ad subscription. So you have to have the top tier subscription. Plex looks like it's in. I saw it pop up on my Plex. I think last night actually. So it's available in beta now, and so you can. They recommend like watching it the movie or TV show on Plex, and then having a Zoom running on the side or on another device. So you're talking to each other and having a chat that way. So what do you guys think of this? Something that you'd consider, or?
I like the idea of the Zoom on the side, only because if I had to sit there and type to people, here's what's going on, I'd get tired real fast.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the idea of watching some things with other people. Like if I was watching, for example, a Hulu show called The Handmaid's Tale, there's a few of us in my friend group that watch this, and if we were watching it at the same time, I could see it would be beneficial because then we could comment on it. But the only problem that happens is people watch TV differently.
Yeah.
So some people love to binge 4 episodes at once, while other people go one at a time at a certain day. So you'd have to find the right group to do this with. But I kind of like the Plex idea.
Yeah. You'd have to also agree on whether you're pausing or not. It's like, do we ever pause the show or no? Oh, Father Corey, what do you think?
I like this idea, and I was just sitting here thinking, kind of brainstorming. Secrets of Star Trek, Secrets of Doctor Who watch parties.
That could be fun.
Where we live comment, where the three of us are on Skype and we live comment.
That could be interesting, and then we can have listeners to the shows join us and listen in as we do our live commentary. That can, especially with some of the more interesting, say like Star Trek episodes, where
first season TNG,
Star Trek 5.
Yes,
maybe we should, when we do Star Trek 5, we should do it as a live watch party.
That would be kind of fun to do it, or the three of us try to find a time where we could get together and do it as a live watch party. And maybe we could even use like Facebook Live or something.
Yeah, so that
people,
would be fun.
People could listen to our stream even if they're not watching the show with us, and then we could do our regular episode later.
That's true.
So, I mean,
that sounds like fun.
No, but it's. I mean, this does. I've seen this starting to pop up a lot more. The live watches. Of course, YouTube has the Premiere system too, where it's kind of similar, where that you record your YouTube video and then you premiere it, and
you set a date and time.
Yeah. So you record the video, you edit, you upload it, and then you set a time when we're going to premiere it. So you could be sitting there in the chat as it's premiering, and everybody's watching it kind of about the same time and everything.
Right.
So it's a very similar idea.
Yeah, it's true.
But can we totally get rid of celebrity watch parties? I mean, Fox has this show, and I think they've started to try to do it on CBS, where you watch celebrities watch something. I have no use for that.
And
that seems bizarre.
And this is an extension of the reaction videos. I mean, it really is.
Yes, on YouTube. It's a genre that I don't get, but yeah. Well, you know what would be really great with this is if they could figure out a way to do this with sports. Where, I mean, I suppose we can already do that, right? We just sports are live, you turn it on, and you have Zoom going on the side, and you watch it with your friends. I suppose you don't really need to do anything special with that, I guess. Because when there is sports again, God willing,
NASCAR.
You're not going to be able to go to the stadium or the ballpark with your friends. So this would be a way to do that.
Exactly.
The Zoom, like a watch party, but maybe someone could come up with a way to add some feature to it. All right, so that's cool. The next one, this is interesting. So the headline is unimpressed by online classes. College students seek refunds, and it's hard to blame them. A lot of college students and the professors were suddenly thrown into this new world, and they were then sent home and told to take classes online. And I'm sure some professors have done a better job than other professors at this. And besides, going to college is more than just sitting in a classroom, right? That's the whole college experience is what you're getting, and not just the partying. I mean, like just the intellectual gathering of like-minded people to discuss interesting topics, that sort of stuff. I mean, that's really what the idea of the university. Cardinal Newman has a great, the St. John Henry Newman has a great book called The Idea of a University, and it's along those lines. So I get it. Like online, the being stuck with online, they want a refund of some sort. Less money, pay less. What do you think?
I'm going to be the old curmudgeon, get off my lawn here, and just say, unless it's for room and board, which I think that should be considered some refundable, because if they had to go home or if they have to stay home, it's not fair that a college collect room and board. But other than that, I think it's look, if my friend who's a 75-year-old theology professor can learn how to do Zoom and still teach his class, then he still deserves to get paid. Yeah. So that's how I look at it.
Well, and I honestly wonder, let's be honest, there's still a lot of college students that really don't go to the classes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many of these students, I mean, maybe these are the ones who were really diligent. Of course, at seminary, we didn't have a choice in the matter. You will be at class unless you're sick, but how many of these students didn't go to class anyway, so it doesn't matter. But
yeah.
And I think it's something colleges, it's a longer discussion, in my opinion, of what colleges and churches and businesses should think about is if this happens again, say in a year, like they think it might, how do we better handle it? And how do we make sure we are ready for it when that time comes? And part of that might be going to their professors and saying, okay, here's our expectations.
Right.
You will have live classes. You will answer students' emails. You will, as if they were sitting in front of you, that kind of thing.
Right. Some of the local colleges in the Boston area here are planning to open, but they're telling the professors, and I feel bad for the professors, plan for both. We have not decided what we're doing yet, so plan for both in-person and online classes, and be ready to switch from one to the other at a moment's notice. It's a tough thing, but hopefully, given some time to prepare, that's going to be different. One of the students' complaints is that it's not so much that it's online, but that what they ended up getting was not even a live lecture. It was just a recorded video with no hope for discussion, and professors were unresponsive. Or another guy was suing because he's an aerospace engineering major, and he couldn't. In the final project for senior final project is to build an airplane, and he didn't get to do that. So maybe he should get some of the money for that back. I'm sympathetic to that.
I can understand that, but the other side of that is they're going to let them, go, I guess, at the point where they will still get credit for the class. They don't have to repeat anything. So I think in and of itself, that's worth the price of admission.
Right. That's the other side of the argument. Is you got what you paid for, which is in one sense is the game, is the grade. You may not have gotten all the experience you hoped for, but there's no guarantee of that when you sign up anyway, I guess, right?
Because you have to show up to class to get it.
Yeah. Well, I have to kind of laugh because I just today threw out all my old notes from seminary, and it's just like, I haven't looked at these in 12 years.
It's all in your head now.
Yeah. No, actually, it's all on that wonderful friend we know as Google.
That's right.
There you go.
And Veribome software and other places as well.
Yes, that's true. Our next headline is it's actually just a little informational article from CNET. Says 3 Amazon Echo security features to use when you leave the house, because we can start doing that now in many places, leaving the house. So and
wow. They're
really actually all tied up in one major feature called I'm going to activate it if I say it, but Echo Guard. You say the other word, the wake word. And what it is you just say the wake word Echo, I'm leaving, as you're walking out of the house, and it goes into a mode where it's monitoring for certain kinds of activity, like smoke alarm noises, carbon monoxide alarms, breaking glass, and it will alert you if it detects anything like that while you're out, which is pretty cool. And then you can drop in, which is another feature that they talk about, but it's part of the Echo, where you say, it says, hey, I've detected, the app on your phone says, I've detected breaking glass. You can drop in and listen if you have one of those, or if you have an Echo that has a camera, an Echo Show, you can have it show you the room, like look through the camera. I don't leave my cameras active, so that would not work for me anyway. And then you can also have Echo do away lighting, which is just like those old things that you used to get when you went on vacation that you plug your lamp into and it turned the lights on and off. This one does it, but more randomly. So it's just a higher tech version of that. What do you guys think of this? Is it useful, gimmicky? What do you think?
I think it sounds very useful. I'm wondering if other ones, Siri or Google, can do that, because I can see that being a very beneficial thing where I've got the Google Home assistants all over my house. And if someone breaks in to have it pick up, there's odds are pretty good there's going to be one close enough to pick up and send me a, hey, did you just drop a glass, or did someone just break into your house?
Right.
I like them. It's just, for me personally, it might be a little bit of overkill, because I already have a Nest.
Yep.
Carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. So I could see if I put on the A Guard, that all of a sudden all of my phone apps are going to start going wild, saying something's happening.
Right. Well,
so it might be overkill.
Yeah. Although if your smoke detectors are going off, if mine were, because I also have the Nest smoke detectors, I wouldn't mind getting alerts from both of them, because that would mean that they're both working. Better to have the backup. One thing it's not a substitute for is a real home security system. Now, I don't know if everybody needs a home security system, but if you think you need one, I think this is a stopgap for someone who doesn't want to spend the money on a home security system, but it's certainly not I don't think it's a bad thing to have.
Well, I have I do have one because it came with my house, and we've upgraded it once. And I think that if something like this would be a lot less false positives than it would with a regular alarm system, because I know if my smoke detectors go off and it is connected to the system, I get a phone call from them and I have to, no, we were just doing something. Don't worry. I've had to call the dogs off.
We burnt supper. Sorry.
I've had to call the dogs off a few times already. So this might be a little bit better for those who don't want to spend that kind of money or didn't come with your house when you bought it.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, you can get alarm systems that do tie into the big three.
Yes.
So that you don't have to worry about ADT or one of the other companies calling you. You get your assistant sending you a text message saying, hey, the window just opened up. Did you do that? Right.
The Echo works with Amazon, also owns Ring, and Ring now has a security system. So they integrate.
And I believe does
Google?
I think Google does. I can't remember if Nest or whoever it is Google has now.
Yeah, I think they did. I don't think Apple has one, but there are HomeKit compatible home alarm systems too. So as usual, the HomeKit ones aren't at the level of the other ones yet, but get there eventually, maybe. And then another headline is about a lawsuit against the Internet Archive by the big book publishers, the top 4 book publishers. So Internet Archive is a nonprofit organization. They're dedicated to getting as much saving data, saving information, keeping it online, accessible to everyone. You probably know them, if you know them at all, from the Internet Wayback Machine, which saves old versions of websites. I've used it even for my own website when I've lost. My website is like 20 years old, so I've had stuff go missing from my website at times, and I have had to rebuild it from that, and it's invaluable. But another part of it is something they call the Open Library. And they was speaking of copyrights and fair use and that sort of stuff from before. What they've done in the past was they did controlled digital lending. They had books that were in copyright and books in public domain, but if they have books in copyright, they would have a physical copy of the book or multiple copies of it in a warehouse somewhere, or, on a shelf somewhere, and then they would lend out a digital copy to people, and they could only lend out as many digital copies as they had physical copies. And the book publishers sort of looked the other way on that. There's an open question whether that's legal or within the bounds of copyright law and all that sort of stuff. But the book publishers sort of looked the other way. This is how public libraries work, in the sense of they buy so many digital copies. They buy digital copies and lend those out separately from the physical copies. We've talked about that before. So what happened is when the coronavirus lockdown hit, Internet Archive said, okay, we're taking the limits off. We will loan out as many copies of these books as people want because they're all stuck at home and looking for things to read. So there's no waiting list. And so it doesn't matter if they have 1 copy or 10 copies, they'll loan out 100 digital copies. And that took the book publishers. I think, from my point of view, I think it forced the book publisher's hand, because if they don't respond to this, that could set a legal precedent when somebody else goes and does something even more egregious and starts, and they go after them and they say, well, you didn't go after Internet Archive. What do you guys think of this? Who do you sympathize with here? Is Internet Archive or the book publishers?
It's one of those 50-50 things. I can see, like you with the book publishers, just saying, okay, they had a physical copy of this book. This was just a scan of a physical copy of a book, and they are only letting 1 copy out. Now anybody can grab it. And they know darn well that if Internet Archive can do it, so can public libraries. And public libraries will do it in a heartbeat, where they're like, hey, we don't have to restrict this anymore. And people want to read the latest, whatever, Harry Potter or the latest Twilight or whatever. And instead of having a waiting list for a year, like some of those books did in some libraries, they can just, hey, everybody can read it.
Right.
So why would you go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any other bookstore and buy a physical copy of it? and you can just read the electronic copy for free, or buy the Kindle version of it when you could just read it for free,
right,
and not have to wait.
I think things that have happened around this pandemic have always been for the sake of others. And I think the Internet Archive was trying to do that. So I'm going to want to sympathize with them and say, look, I don't think they were trying to usurp publishers per se. I think they were just trying to fill a need for people, and especially a lot of people who don't have the resources if they've been laid off or in a lower class of income, that they can't get at these things, and now they're home stuck.
right.
So I think they were trying to fill a void, and they crossed the line. So I'd cut them some slack on it.
Right. I think one of the arguments the Internet Archive made is all these public libraries were closed. People couldn't get to libraries. They couldn't get access to books unless they were willing to buy them. And so I think so they were responding to a public need. But they are a nonprofit that does a good service and relies on the goodwill of the public. But the publishers have a pretty strong case. Frankly, what I would rather see is that the publishers would have done something along these lines to make books more accessible to folks who are stuck at home. But we'll have to see. This could be. This sort of thing, if it goes against the Internet Archive in a bad way, is the sort of thing that could destroy it. And I think they made a precipitous decision to do this when they did. So we'll see how that shakes out for them. So I think at this point we should move on to our picks of the week, and we have some. Let's see, Joanne, why don't you go first and give us your pick of the week?
Well, one is a general pick. The other one is specific to my state, but they're both apps, and they both have to do with COVID symptoms and COVID tracking. Okay, I know some people don't want to do that. They don't want Big Brother up, knowing every single thing. But I think it's important right now because in the first one, which is the general one, the COVID symptom study, this is out of Harvard, and it's with the National Women's Health. And what they're doing is trying to track people every day and how they're feeling. And every once in a while, they'll ask you questions like, are you taking vitamins? Have you taken vitamins for the last 3 months? What ones have you taken? Because I think they're trying to see the correlation between certain vitamins and the virus. So they'll ask you questions, but the general ones is, how do you feel today? Have you had a test taken? And both my husband and I have had tests taken for various reasons. So I have that down, and then it just says, how are you feeling? Fine. Okay. And all it's doing is tracking. And then when your specific county reaches a certain level, then they will start to process all of it so that you can see the results. My county, unfortunately, needs about 60 more people. So they want you to share it. But I believe in doing studies like this. I did the Apple Health study. I believe if I can help people in this way, it's part of giving back to, maybe it'll be quicker to find a cure. The second one is specific to Rhode Island, and it's called Crush COVID RI. Yes, it's our specific state tracker, and it keeps a location diary as part of your, our governor has told us to keep a contact tracing diary in case we do get it, because the Department of Health will call us. And this one does do location tracking, but you have control of it. You can either send it to them if you should happen to get the virus, so that they can go start contacting, or you can read it to them. You don't have to, send it to them. And it does symptom tracking. It gives you all kinds of helpful things. But this is specifically Rhode Island statewide. We've got about 41,000 downloads on it. She'd like to see a little bit more. So I have no problem with this. Basically, because I just have the opinion, I have nothing to hide. So I have no problem. You want to know where I've been? I've been to work, and I've been home, and I've been to the grocery store. There you go. But I think for some people, this is a way for people to get involved, with helping this crisis, and hopefully come up with some kind of solutions, cures, treatments, whatever. So I just put it out there for folks who are like-minded like me, and the rest of you can all stay in your little bubbles. That's fine.
Okay. Father Corey, what's your pick?
So my pick's a little bit different than what usually do for technology. I've got a portable sound system that I use for different events relating to the church. One of the big ones we do a pub trivia at the local brewery. And recently a wireless microphone died that I was using. And of course, it's easier to use a wireless microphone when you're doing events like that, because then you can walk around. I use my iPad with Bluetooth to do some music and stuff, and it works pretty well. So I found this on Amazon. It's from a company called Tonor, which is probably one of these unknown name companies that exist of, stuff from China. But it's a really good dual wireless microphone setup. It's a 900 megahertz UHF wireless dual setup. It does a great job. It sounds good, and it's $75 on Amazon.
Wow.
It's cheap. And you could do either both microphones plugged in separately, where it's got two, like an A and B jack, or you can do the middle jack, which does both of them off the same mixer channel. So you could either do the dual channels, the split channels, or the one channel for both microphones, and you can adjust the volume on the front of it and everything. It's all digital, so it's got a digital display on both the microphone and the receiver, showing what channel you're on, what frequency you're on, and everything. It's something like 15 frequencies per mic that you can do. So 900 is a fairly common frequency, so you might get some interference, but then you just hit the button on the microphone a couple of times and flips over to a different channel, and it does it automatically. You don't have to set it on the microphone and then set it on the receiver. It's just you hit the button and the microphone and the receiver says, okay, change channel, and it flips over.
Nice.
And you can do, there are different frequencies for each microphone, and so it works great. I've been using it now for a couple of months and have had absolutely no problems with this thing whatsoever. It sounds good, and it sounds good in the brewery, which is a noisy environment. This is not a church where it's fairly quiet. This is, people are talking everything, and I have had no problems with it with feedback. I've had no problems with it with, again, picking up people around. It just works, just sounds good. It works great, and it's relatively cheap. $75 for a dual microphone wireless system. If you're looking for something like this for a church, I could see this being great for a church. If you don't want to wire up, your ambo and things like that, this would be a good way to do it. Stuff like that. So yeah, it's like I said, the Tonor, Tonor dual wireless microphone.
Awesome. So my pick is a tech bag. So if you have a bag, a laptop bag, when you're going out of the house someday and taking your laptop with you again, often a lot of us had our laptop bag or other iPad bag or whatever, and all these cables just thrown in the bottom. They all get tangled. You can never find the one you want. Well, and I've spent years trying different ways of organizing my cables in my bag, and this has worked out really well. So it's the UCool Cable Organizer Electronics Accessory Case. It rolls off the tongue, and it's a zipped open case, so it opens up and lies flat. And on each side, it has elastic bands, little places to stick things, and little pockets. It's got a lot of different places for a bunch of cables and different dongles and charging packs and all sorts of stuff like that. That room for that. And one of the best parts of it that I like is the fact that the interior is bright green. I don't know why all these laptop bag makers make their interiors dark with this dark material where you can't, especially if you have dark cables against a dark background and you can't see anything in it. So it comes like this lime green exterior. The outside's black, but the exterior is lime green, and so everything stands out clearly against it, so you can see what you're doing, even if you're in a low light situation. And it's $10, and it's a great little solution for just $10. I keep it in my bag. It's got all the cables in it, nicely organized. I take it out, and I can find what I want, extremely quickly. And it's a great little bag. So that's my pick of the week. All right, let's wrap things up there, I guess. We do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including David A., Jeff K., Jonathan K., and Mark R., and Ronald B. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarkWest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear your take on the various things we discussed. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. You can find links from our discussion and the picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. If you've not yet done so, please right away, do it right now. Subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should hit the bell to get notifications. And until next time, Joanne Mercier, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thanks, Dom.
Father Corey Stika, thank you as well.
Well, thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.